My design is called the Hobbee Table. This is a combination of the words hobby and coffee. This is because it will be the size of a coffee table and is intended to be used to store hobby setups, but we will get to that later. The design for this coffee table has two key features, those being a sliding tambour surface operated by a chain and sprocket in combination with a crank, axles and pinion gears, which interlock with the tambour slats for smooth motion and even parallel movement, and a secret inner platform, assisted by gas struts, which raise the surface for access but can be pushed down and latched away for storage. This project provides many learning opportunities in the form of new manufacturing techniques and tool use that I have not had much experience with, and creating and troubleshooting engineering systems. More on that later. The design opportunity that I have identified is that coffee tables often have a lot of clutter, which has been linked to a decrease in well-being, in particular heightened emotional exhaustion and stress. Common coffee tables, like this one from Harvey Norman, do very little to maximize storage and minimize clutter. I've observed this clutter for myself at my baby cousin's house. This is their coffee table. Look familiar? As you can see, that thin space can hardly store anything practical, only thin objects and only things that can be easily reached from the edges of the table. The inside space is completely inaccessible. Now, I'm sure that you can see Maddie and Jess's absolutely sick Minecraft Lego setup. This occupies their coffee table 24/7, and it's all connected, so it's not easy to move. When I stayed over there during crack at the end of last year, I got to experience the inability for emotional environment to change and relax once the kids were in bed. My uncle, aunt, and I would watch TV and not have a place to lay down food or even pass the remote. So, the demographics I'm targeting with my product are obviously parents, with Lego and train sets alike, but who else has similar issues? Geeks. Just kidding. We'll call them hobbyists. Hobbyists who create, display, and play with models require large flat surfaces that they can access from all sides to view their creations. Sometimes hobbyists even have a separate room or nook so that their interests can be set up in a permanent space, not disturbing the other living spaces. Some hobbies, such as Dungeons & Dragons, can require tabletop play, with some players who enjoy making physical character models and detailed maps on their imaginary world. I knew a guy who used to build model castles with mini molds that looked like ice cube trays, and he would fill them with cement and construct scaled buildings. Hobby setups are usually not easy to disassemble and reset continuously, so this market requires a large flat surface with variable height accommodation that can be moved or hidden away as one to remain undisturbed and set up ready for the next use. Hobbyists are often used to large one-time purchases for their specific needs, which are not often met by mass-produced products. When coming up with the design solution, I analysed a lot of existing hidden access tables, such as extensions. I knew that none of these would suit the design problem, but I took some inspiration from each one. I knew that I wanted it to be all together, with no additional parts that have to be stored elsewhere or lifted. I liked the aspect of hiding the object without moving it too much, like in this example. Then I remembered a video that I watched a few months back by my absolute STEM and design idol, Simone Giertz. Simone created a puzzle table with tambour slats attached to a fabric, running along a track, pulled by cogs, attached to a bike chain and handles. Inside, a platform is lifted by a small egg-shaped cam. She's a bloody genius. Now, before you all say I'm copying her, yes, I am. But also, I'm not, because her table is too small for my cousin's Lego world. I need it to be taller. Which also means that that tiny little cam model is A, not going to move up and down enough to make an ergonomic surface to work on, and B, would not hold the weight of a miniaturized concrete castle. Now, within this design idea, there were a few options. I had to figure out the sizing. These were the original dimensions. I had 3 options, with the first one being that A is the same size as this, meaning that B, the smaller surface, is smaller, but C, the overall shape, is larger because of these curves. Next one was that C was the width of this so that it would fit in the same space. And option 3 was that B, the hobby surface, which is what the current Lego set is on, is actually prioritized, and then it's much longer. I had to figure out an alternative way to raise and lower the platform without disturbing activities on the hidden shelf, and it had to be long reach. I had a few different ideas, but finally settled on this gas strut following a track. I thought maybe I could lock it in with a latch, but recently I came up with the idea where I have this kind of J shape where it will come down and get stuck, forcing upwards, and I could even have multiple levels for different height adjustments. Which materials will be used and why? As far as my aesthetics go, my original goal was to imitate teak, as that is the wood species of the rest of my aunt and uncle's furniture. I knew I couldn't go with teak itself, as its rarity since mass use to the point of near extinction in the 1960s. The high demand for teak has led to illegal logging in old-growth tropical forests, making the species poor in sustainability compared to alternatives. My next choices were known close likenesses, those being cherry, jatoba, and larch. Sadly, none of these were available through Anagoat or other suppliers that I rang. This led me to the display board at Anagoat, where I held a picture of teak next to the board and one by one googled sustainability and searched for preferable workability properties, followed by asking the lovely Canadian man if they had any in stock. As both Liams can vouch, I must have asked for about 15 different species until I finally landed on Australian blackbutt. This eucalypt is heavy stuff, but workable and comes right from our very own lovely state of New South Wales, meaning transport emissions are also less than internationally shipped timber. For the sides, I had a choice between MDF or plywood, as this was going to be CNC'd. Hardwood would be too expensive for hollowing out, heavy, and is likely to chip and splinter under CNC. I also wasn't a fan of having to veneer thin strips around edges of an MDF board, and I liked the idea of the cool layer look on the side profile of plywood. Which manufacturing methods and why? CNC was required to keep the measurements accurate and stable as one piece rather than glued layers like in my prototype. Routering with tongue and groove pieces allows for a neater look with minimal gaps. In terms of experimentation and testing, I have fine-tuned the router bit movement outcomes, tested a scale model of the tambour and cog mechanism, and compressed various gas struts in tracks for resistance and ease of movement. Next tests I began this week, where I measured the space between my slat teeth and laser cut a test gear to see if it could roll smoothly over the pieces when laid flat together and curved. A future test is the gas strut tracks as I refine them in their process.